All right, so welcome to the first night of reunion. My name is Maggie and I'm here with Bryan and we're gonna do some lobster roll making. It's gonna be beautiful. Just a couple updates for you all. This event is part of the 2021 Reunion Talk series. And if we'd been able to gather on campus, tonight would have been the very first night of Reunion Weekend. So we would be moving into residence halls, enjoying some dinner at Thorn, maybe getting a pub cookie from the pub, who's to say. So we're very sorry that we can't be together on campus, but we're very excited that you're here with us this evening for our lovely Zoom reunion. A couple things to know about today's session. Closed captioning is available and it's at the bottom of your screen. There should be a little like CC live transcript button that you can click. There will be a live Q&A during the event, so please submit questions at any time. And we also have the chat going. So if you wanna share your reunion year, where you're living, your freshman dorm, whatever feels right, we'd love to hear from you. And then this event is being recorded and it will be posted to the reunion site. If you want to go back and check or want to tell friends, oh my gosh, this event was amazing, you must go watch. Okay, so I am gonna give the mic over to Bryan. Bryan is here, member of the class of 2009. He was an econ major and legal studies minor. Oh, sorry, econ and government major. I'm so sorry. Chief Development Officer of Luke's Lobster. And winner of Best Mustache Ever, right? That's the full time, fantastic.
Yeah, in your category, yeah.
So Bryan is going to lead us through a little bit about Luke's Lobster and then making some lobster rolls.
Perfect. Well, thank you to Bowdoin for having us and thank you to Maggie for hosting this and facilitating this conversation. So again, I'm Bryan Holden. Happy to be here, class of 2009. I'm calling in from Biddeford, Maine. That's where I live. And like Maggie said, here to tell you a bit about the company I work with, Luke's Lobster, and how to make the perfect lobster roll. So if anybody has any questions as I go, or if I'm rambling or anything like that, just put something in the chat bar there and we can have side conversations. So I think what I'll do here is I'll share my screen to just show you guys some pictures while I talk. Here we go. And yeah, that looks right. So I think the best way to tell everybody about Luke's Lobster and tell you guys about our company is to kind of talk about how I grew up and where I grew up. I grew up in Cape Elizabeth, Maine, and was grew up in a fishing family. My dad was a lobsterman, and I think he was mostly a lobsterman because his dad was a lobsterman. So it's what he grew up in, it's what he was familiar with, and what he came to love. And, after about fishing for 10 years or so, I think he kind of looked around and realized what a tough business it is and what a tough job it is to be a fisherman. So he got into the lobster processing business, and this was back in the early 1980s. And for those who don't know, lobster processing is just another way of saying cooking a bunch of lobsters at grand scale and turning them into finished products, sort of similar to what Bowdoin does such a great job with at reunions, but in an indoor setting. And so that's what my dad got into. At the time, he was actually had the first lobster processing license in the state of Maine. And that's what my brothers and I grew up in. So as kids, we were down at the wharfs with him. We were in the production facility. We would lobster in the summers and fish in the summers. So when we went off to college, my parents, particularly my mom, was kind of hoping we'd get out of the family business and go off and do other things. And we did for a while. We went into banking, consulting, but alas, here we are, kind of got back to our roots. Luke started back in 2009. At the time, this is my brother and my dad. My brother was working in New York and he was a banker and liked what he did, but didn't really love what he did. My dad came down to visit him one weekend, and they were just walking around New York, talking about business up north, talking about Luke's business, and had the real simple idea of just taking what my dad makes, puts all the effort into making these finished products and selling them directly to the customer. So just like a very simple business idea. So about a few days later, we signed a lease in the East Village of New York. That's the first location. It was a 200 square foot location. It was an old consignment shop. So it had no infrastructure, which, you know, we knew nothing about at the time. We had very limited budget, no experience, but, you know, just kind of wanted to try to make it work, try to do something with it. And, you know, really from the onset, it was successful and it was popular. And I think that was really just due to the authenticity of what my dad was doing up in Maine. It was just taking this really high quality product and delivering it straight to customers. So in those opening days, we just had lines around the block, reviews were great. And, you know, we ran out of product super quickly. So my dad was driving back and forth to Maine. He had ice in his trunk, just like trying to get product up here. So it was a crazy first couple months. After we kind of caught our breath, we started growing more. We opened a few more locations in New York and eventually opened in our second market in Washington, DC. And at this point, it was about 2013. And what we started to see was it was very difficult to have our type of restaurants without a dedicated production company. At this point, our demand was really outpacing the supply. Our dad was creating, and he was doing it for, you know, at this point, he's doing it for 20 years and was kind of ready to shut it down. So we went up to Maine, we opened a production facility. Luckily, we had him as a mentor to figure out how to set it up. And really what this facility did was allowed us to be better stakeholders and more involved in the industry. So that way we could own our source, own the quality of it, and just focus all of our efforts at creating the best quality product that we could then ship out to our restaurants. So really, after we set up that line of vertical integration, it was a great time for us to grow. We were producing our products up in Maine, and with that simplicity, we're able to grow our concept. And it was very similar to that first location in the East Village in New York. And we got to the point where we had 20 locations, or we have 20 locations in 10 different cities and 8 international locations in Japan, Singapore, and Taiwan. You can see some of what our shacks look like here. This is a picture of one in San Francisco. Here's the location of one in Portland, Maine. For the most part, they're very simple, very small kitchens. Because of all the complexity that's consumed up in Maine, we don't have to do cooking on site. They're very simple, with the exception of that one location in Portland, Maine, which is kind of a flagship location. Here is some pictures. We have a location under the Brooklyn Bridge Park in New York. Here's a location in Tokyo. Yeah, let's see what else we got here. Food truck location in Boston. So yeah, all pretty simple, all pretty straightforward. Same menus, selling lobster, crab, and shrimp. And that's really been our growth strategy over the last few years. Our production facility in Maine now has grown quite a bit from that initial setup where it was 12,000 square feet to where it is now, where it's 40,000 square feet. And on an average day, we produce anywhere from 35 to 40,000 pounds of live lobster. So a lot of live lobster coming through the facility. And we have really grown that business to match the growth of our restaurants, both domestically and internationally. But sort of one thing we've learned as we've gone through it was when we cook a lobster, our lobster rolls are only the knuckle and the claw, and we have to sell the whole product. So over the years, we've launched a consumer product goods business, a branded grocery business, and you can see a lot of that stuff in the top. And really, that was born out of just trying to leverage our ability to produce products, leverage our brand, and also just make sure we're selling everything that we're bringing into the facility. So going into this past year, that was our business kind of humming along, and then the pandemic came about. So we got to a position where, you know, all our restaurants and our sales are busiest in the summer. So we were all set up, we were all staffed, we had full inventory, production facility was chugging, and then everything sort of just ground to a halt. So we were kind of faced with what do we do with all these people? What do we do with all this inventory? What do we do with this company? And that's what you can see in the bottom there, where we launched an online market, which you can see on our website, and that's what I'll be cooking later for you guys. But it's still the same philosophy as our restaurants, where we are handling everything ourselves and then just trying to remove all middlemen and just go straight from the processors to the end user. So that's been a great initiative for us over the past year, and it's allowed us to do a lot of different types of seafood. Here's some pictures of our food. These are what our lobster rolls look like, lobster bisque. Through our online market, we've started selling scallops based on the time of the year. We have a buying station in Portland, Maine, connected to our restaurant, and we unload a lot of tuna fish there. So this is a tuna recipe. We sell a lot of tuna on our website. Some additional products here, as well as these are lobster cakes, which we also produce at our production facility in Saco. As a branded grocery product. So that's really a condensed version of our business. Yeah.
Well, Bryan, we've got a couple questions for you if you're ready. First off, is a beautiful pitch from Marshall coming in hot, selling just a lobster knuckle sandwich. He says it's the best part. So it's a brilliant business move. So there you go. And then a follow-up question from Coco. I was like, what happened to the screen? Follow-up question from Coco. I know that Luke's has done a lot to support like the Maine environment and sustainability, and she's wondering how you all support like the lobster population. So if you could speak a little bit to Luke's role in Maine, that would be beautiful.
Yeah, and the two are very connected. So I think as a business, we believe in a stakeholder theory. So, we try to participate in every step along the way, whether it's supporting the fishermen and the environment they fish in, to the processors, to our end users at a restaurant. So it's definitely something top of mind. And because we're so connected to the source, we feel really like a responsibility to participate in it and talk about it. So as much as we can, we try to get our teammates to understand just really the sustainability of the Maine fishery. We're also a certified B Corp, which has kind of allowed us to go back and look at our whole business and make sure that we're making decisions that don't put the bottom line first. So, to make sure that we're working with fishermen that are, forward thinking, whether it's putting solar on their buying stations. So currently we're helping different buying stations throughout Maine add solar to their to their wharfs, to trying to get to move engines over to biodiesel. And, it's just like every step along the way, it's kind of flagging the opportunity for change, and then just being a voice to talk about it, because we do have a microphone and we do have purchasing power, because as we've gotten bigger, we've had more influence in the industry. From the early days, we were just kind of a small company, and as we've grown, you can really have ability to push for change as much as possible.
As an offshoot of this, I'm curious if you have any recommendations for people who are for our Maine friends hoping to get involved in sustainability or supporting the lobster industry through charities or any like volunteer work in Maine, if there are any companies that you all are like, these guys are great.
So we do, and this is like a very small scale thing, but we do a bunch of hosted beach cleanups through our company. So you could definitely look out for that. Other than that, I would say if you're trying to support a fisherman, I think buying directly as much as possible and trying to go to the source as much as possible. And we've recently partnered with the Island Institute, and that was part of our Luke's on Lawn Market and the diversification to other species, where now we're selling halibut, we're selling scallops, we're selling tuna. And one thing these fishermen face is that there are declining populations of lobster, and there's uncertainty about what the future will hold. So a lot of these fishermen are so leveraged on fishing lobster. So the more they can diversify their catch to growing kelp or fishing halibut this time of year, and just trying to do more than just lobster can be great. So I would say just buying directly from fishermen as much as you can, and is a good step.
That's great. That's great to know. An important question has come up in the chat that must be addressed absolutely immediately. Was Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain an inspiration behind your mustache, or is this just you?
He definitely was, and I would say Angus King is as well. And I know that the two of them. I took a class with Angus, and he just talked about Joshua Chamberlain all the time, which got me pretty interested in him. So I would say I have to give the nod to my dad first for the mustache, but Joshua Chamberlain was definitely part of the inspiration for sure.
Fantastic. We love. Should we jump into making a lobster roll?
Yeah, so I can get into that process, and it's the key to making the best lobster roll is having the best ingredients, and that's really what we base our whole business around. And starting with the fishermen, that's where most of the hard work is done. So what we focus a lot of our time and initiative is partnering with fishermen to get the product as soon as it gets out of the water onto a refrigerated truck into our facility, where we then cook it, pick it, and send it out directly to our restaurants. So that's what we have here, and that's what allows us to be so easy. So whether it's being prepared in a kitchen in Singapore or here in Biddeford, it's pretty straightforward.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. I did have a question about that. When you said y'all have a place in Tokyo, yeah, surely you don't bring the lobsters from Maine to Tokyo. Is that a silly question?
It all comes from our facility in Saco. What we do is we nitrogen freeze everything, and then we fly it over. So it all comes from here, just because this is where the fishery is based out of, is Maine and Canada. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, it's great. So like if you go to a restaurant there, it's pretty much the exact same as you'd see in New York.
Wow, that's beautiful. You heard it here first, friends. Go to Tokyo for your Maine lobster.
All right, so it starts with a New England split top bun, and that's what these look like here. And basically, it's pretty bland. It's just bread, and really it's just a vessel to get as much butter as possible into the sandwich. So what we do in the restaurants, it starts by just buttering one of these, and then I pre-toasted the rolls. So if you're doing it at home, see if you guys can see this. If you're doing it at home, really it's pretty straightforward. Just melt butter, toast the roll, and you want to get it to a nice golden brown, which is what we have here.
This is so great. Bryan, if you're interested in multitasking, I've got another question for you. Do you feel ready for it? Or do you need a minute?
No, go for it.
Okay, we've got a question from Paul. How is the warming of the waters along the New England coast affecting the future for Luke's?
It's definitely affecting the future for Luke's, and it's something we constantly think about. With just lobster alone, the resource is definitely moving north. And, you could see that several years ago. So over the past few years, we've started sourcing product from Canada as well. So this time of year, we're actually buying live lobster from Canada and bringing it down to our facility in Maine. And that's not just because of global warming, it's more just the way the Maine seasons and the Canadian seasons interact. But the resource is definitely moving north. Catches that you would see in Portland 10 years ago in southern Maine are not what they were. And so it's something we're incredibly mindful of and trying to protect against as much as possible. And it also kind of feeds into what I was talking to about earlier about with fishermen, about trying to deleverage a little bit on lobster and trying to do other things like whether it's grow kelp, which can actually help with the warming oceans, or fish different species and things like that. So it's definitely something we're constantly thinking about.
A great question.
All right. So I've got these buns heated up.
Paul says, thank you. He lives on Cape Cod and he catches lobsters too.
Yeah, and he probably, Cape Cod has definitely seen what southern Maine is seeing in terms of catch kind of disappearing a little bit. So I've got my bun all toasted up nicely. Then I've got my mayo here. And we make ours what are considered Maine style. So it's just a very light amount of mayo. And basically I just scrape the inside of the bun. I know some people
tilt us down a little bit. We might be able to see a little bit better.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Just a little bit, just like a little bit on the inside. Not too much. A lot of people will make like a lobster salad, which can be nice, but just not what we do because we try to feature the product as much as possible. So after that, after you have this, you take the lobster, and this is what it looks like. It's refrigerated. We after we cook it, we put it in refrigeration, and that's what we hold it at. So it's held at about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. And each lobster roll gets 4 ounces of meat. So what I'm doing is just putting it in here. And like we talked about earlier, it's all knuckles and claws in our lobster rolls, which can be a little contentious to some people, but I think those in the know tend to agree with it.
Bryan, quick cue for you. I'm just coming up with all the questions. What is the ideal temperature for lobster roll meat? Like, what should we be refrigerating it at?
Well, whatever you hold your other products at is good for lobster. I mean, you wouldn't want to change just for that. In our shacks, we hold all of our refrigeration at below 37 degrees, but that's a little bit extreme for probably a home refrigerator. So, anything south of 41 degrees is good and food safe. And if you want to pull it out a little bit before you actually prepare it, that can be nice. So it's not overly cold. You don't want it to warm up, but just to lose the chill can be nice. So this is what it looks like stuffed. And what I have here is melted butter.
Oh boy.
And yeah, that is a big ingredient here is butter. And then from there, we take a little bit of lemon and squeeze it in.
Oh. And the lemon adds like a little bit of citrus. I've seen
citrus. Yeah, you can definitely taste it. It's just kind of a nice little addition. And
did you come up with this recipe, or is this like it's an old family recipe, right?
Well, it's pretty standard across Maine. I think it's just when you have fresh lobster. I mean, we didn't really create anything new. We just kind of tried to do it at a bigger scale and just try to do it as efficiently as possible. So this is something we didn't really mess with. But when we did start the business, all throughout New York and Boston and a lot of the cities we're in, you won't really see it like this. You'll see more of like a salad with lettuce and other ingredients. This is a lot of butter, but that's kind of what I like. we just strip that all the way, so it's just lobster.
Yeah.
So after that, we send this out with all of our online market kits, but it's a secret seasoning, which I guess we did create that, but it's not too fancy. Here's what it looks like.
Beautiful.
And then we just sprinkle it on top, not an overwhelming amount, just a light dusting.
How much butter should I be adding to my lobster roll? Like how many spoonfuls would you say? Or like how much butter did you melt?
Enough to like you kind of coat everything.
Okay.
It's possible to do too much, but I haven't really seen that yet. I like a lot of butter, so I would say it's kind of you'll know when you've gone too far. But so yeah, that's it, and pretty simple. And really, the key to it is what I was talking about earlier with just it's all about kind of caring for the supply chain and honoring the supply chain. And really, it's the fishermen that do all the work. And then from there, we just try to be good stewards of the supply chain and just try not to mess it up. Try to get it to our facility where a lot of the hard work's done, and then from there, just get it into homes. And that way, once it gets into the house, you can just kind of do it as simply as possible.
That's so fantastic. Do you have a favorite menu item from Luke's? Is it the lobster roll?
It is, but I'd say a close second's the shrimp roll.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We used to process shrimp at our facility in Saco, but the main shrimp fishery shut down quite a few years ago. So we actually get a lot of our shrimp from Gas Bay up in Canada.
Okay. Shrimp roll. I assume a similar recipe, right?
Very similar. Yeah, like painfully simple, and that's kind of what we try to do. And over the years, we've thought about tinkering with it, have tinkered with it, and just it always reverts back to the first way we did it, and that's just trying to be as simple, trying to have the seafood stand on its own. And at our Portland restaurant, that's what that culinary team really focuses on too, is not trying to like over prepare anything and really just focus on what's in season and just really letting the ingredients speak for themselves.
And if I'm not mistaken, as I was perusing the website, I think I saw some dessert options. No?
Yeah, we have blueberry pie, and we actually ship that as well. But we work with a local bakery. For those in Maine, will know it. It's Two Fat Cats. They do an incredible job. And then that's what we use in Portland, and that's what we use for our online market. But beyond that, in all of our markets, our GMs, general managers will identify local desserts and try to work with somebody in their neighborhood. Similar with breweries, just trying to localize the business as much as possible.
Sure. Eric has a question. What's your favorite non-Luke's lobster roll? So like if you weren't going to pick the one you made, is there another lobster place that you're like, hard yes?
Yeah, I mean, I love Red Zeets. A lot of people probably know that one. And that's very similar to what we do. Just incredibly simple. They source a great product, prepare it very similarly. But so I really like that one as well.
That's awesome. And then we have the questions are blowing up, friends. Please keep sending them. These are such great questions. I'm so here for it. What is the right size lobster to buy? And how many rolls would one lobster get? Great questions.
That is a great question. I think the best size lobster is about 1.25 pounds to a little bit less than that. And ideally, that's what we would be processing exclusively at our facility. However, it doesn't really work like that. There's a range, and certain parts of Maine, certain parts of Canada are known for different size lobsters. Some have bigger claws, some have bigger tails, but you can basically tell where the lobster came from by looking at it. But this lobster roll here has the knuckles and claws of 4 to 5 lobsters, depending on the size. So quite a bit. And I was really shocked. I knew it, but I was very shocked by it when we started processing it, because we had no game plan to sell the lobster tails whatsoever. And we were great at selling lobster rolls. So all of a sudden we were in this situation where for every lobster roll we sold, we then had to figure out how to sell five lobster tails. So it's a good question, and it's one I've learned the hard way.
Wow, that's wild. Our next question, I feel like, so my dad is here. It's his reunion year as well. So hi, Dad. At my house, we always pick lobster by hand. Obviously, we don't have a machine, but in your company, do you have a machine that does it, or is it people?
People, incredibly talented people that just can just cruise through it. So there's about 30 pickers on a normal day, and they don't have much more sophisticated equipment than you have at home, just probably a little bit of a sharper knife and a table that's set up a little bit better, and just all day that's it's pretty incredible. So we don't have a machine. A lot of people have tried to create machines to do it. It's just incredibly hard to recreate. And, it takes a lot of touch, because certain times of the year, as a lot of there's hard shell and there's soft shell. This time of year, the meat really sticks if it's coming from Canada. So to have an equipment to handle all the nuances of that would be incredibly difficult. And it's not a huge industry either, lobster processing. So I'm not sure if like any of the really big equipment manufacturers have put enough effort into figuring it out, because there's just not a big market for those types of machines as well.
That makes sense. This is a little bit off topic, but I'm now curious. For like shrimp and crabs, are there machines to pick any shellfish?
So shrimp, there definitely are. There's pretty automated facilities if you go to like Norway or Iceland or Canada, and you can go into some of those production facilities and you can count the amount of people on two hands that are in there running it. It's just incredibly automated. Whereas a lobster production day will have anywhere from 150 to 200 people working. And crab is even more labor intensive than lobster, as you guys can imagine. There's just so many little pieces that it's just incredibly labor intensive to do that.
Having grown up in Baltimore, I've picked a fair few crabs myself, and it's also so much less meat for the amount of work.
It's crazy, yeah. It's a very difficult product for sure.
Bananas. Next question. Oh, you mentioned this earlier, but I think we've had some friends come in and leave in the midst. What happens to the lobster tail meat? What does Luke do with the lobster bits that they don't use?
So the lobster tails all get raw frozen. So we take them. This part of the operation is pretty automated, but we have a series of conveyors that you just one at a time put the tail down, it weighs it and directs it into a bin. And from there, we package it based on the size, we raw freeze it, and then we sell it to the end user. The end user for us is mostly Whole Foods. So we're nationwide with Whole Foods. So if you go into your local spot, they'll have our lobster tails in them. You'll see them in the retail case, they'll say Luke's. And then if you go to just like the fish counter and they have them out, those are ours as well. So they're put in a 10-pound box if they go to the refresh case, and then if they go to the retail, they're smaller, two tail packs. So that's where the majority of it goes, probably 70% of it, and the other one's a bunch of smaller accounts that do similar things with it.
We have a handful of questions on this topic, but as we've just finished making our lobsters, we real quick have to answer, do you have a recommended beverage for enjoying the lobster roll you've just made?
I got to shout out Green Bee in Brunswick, Maine. They're a great company, and we've done a lot of work with them over the years. So those that don't know about them, look them up. It's a great company. But if I'm having a beer with it, which I like to do, I would probably go to Banded Brewery, which is just down the street from here in Biddeford, Maine. But
we've got some opinions popping off in the chat.
This could be a
I'm just saying, Allagash White or bust.
Can't go wrong there. Yeah, never say otherwise. We sell it in all our locations, so we definitely agree.
If anyone else has an opinion on a great lobster roll beverage, please send them in the chat. We're going to jump back to what we were talking about earlier. So we talked about the lobster tails. the lobster meat from the bodies. Is there meat in the bodies? There is, right?
Bodies, yep.
Does that?
Yeah, so I guess we sort of have an automated process for the legs. So if you've cooked a lobster at home, you guys will probably try to get the meat out of the legs. We have a set of machinery that basically has two wheels that work against each other, and that squeezes the meat out. So that's what we do with that. And then the bodies, we'll do one of two things. We'll either sell them raw bulk, which goes to chefs to make things like lobster stock, or we'll run them through a machine that basically just turns it into sort of like a lobster paste, which sounds gross, but it's basically all the protein within the lobster bodies, and that's what a lot of people use to create lobster bisque with.
Oh,
But definitely one of the challenges we've had over the year is just full utilization. So if a pound of lobster comes in, we want to use 100% of it. So that's something we've really challenged ourselves over the years, so we're not wasting any of it. And one of the big projects we've been working on the past couple of years is what to do with the shell. It's an amazing amount of byproduct.
that was the next question.
Cool. Yeah, it's a huge byproduct, and what we have been working on in our facility in Saco is we got an old tobacco dryer that we bought down in Tennessee and had shipped up, and we've retrofitted it to a fluid bed dryer. So all the shell that comes out of our facility, we crush, and then we run it through our dryer, which basically takes all the protein and moisture out of it. So then it's shelf stable. Otherwise it would rot. So we turn it into a shelf stable product. We run it through a series of sieves. And then from that point, once it's shelf stable, you have all sorts of opportunities of things you can do with it. So the easiest thing to do with it is turn it into fertilizer. So we work with a lot of fertilizing companies in Maine, and we sell them that. We actually just launched 4-pound bags of the shell in select Whole Foods. So I think you can get it in New Jersey and Connecticut currently, maybe in the Portland one, I'm not sure. And then further down that waste stream supply chains, you can turn it into something called chitosan, which is, definitely a rabbit hole to go down. But stuff we're always trying to work on, just because you don't want to waste any of this. So we're always trying to find ways to get more use out of it. And if you get more use out of it, you can pay more for it and then return more to the fishermen. So it's definitely like a big initiative of ours to limit waste and increase value out of the lobster as much as possible.
That's wild. And it makes like a good fertilizer? I've never heard that before. That's so cool.
Yeah, it makes great fertilizer. A lot of people in Maine do it anyways. Like they'll get people's lobster shells and put in their garden. I use it in my raised beds and flower gardens, and it works incredible. It's got a lot of elements that you need in a natural fertilizer.
Wow, that's awesome. A great question for this moment in our lives when we've been having lobster. Is there a secret to getting the lobster aroma from your hands? That stuff stays.
I constantly smell like lobster. My truck smells like lobster. Everything I own smells like lobster. So I've given up. It's just, but no, I don't think. If you find one, please let me know, because I remember my dad always smelled like that as a kid, and it's like a very memorable sense. And now I realize that's the way I smell, and all the time people will be like, "What's that? It's that scent I'm getting off?" Yeah.
It's my cologne. That's really sweet, though, that it's like, I don't know, brings back good memories.
Yeah, well, sort of.
Okie dokie. I'm going to hit some buttons here. Amazing. Oh, Quincy says lobster claws. Oh, sorry, white claws and lobster claws. No brainer.
Good branding. Well,
yeah.
I'll have to run that one up over to the marketing department after this.
That's fantastic. And Linda said that early settlers used lobsters as fertilizers. That's fascinating. I once heard that they served lobster to prisoners because it was like akin to serving them rats.
Yeah, that's definitely like one of those things that everybody in Maine gets told a bunch of times, and it's true. I just think initially there wasn't like a huge demand for it, and people were catching them, and they were so plentiful.
Mm.
It was used as prison food for sure.
Yeah. Stephanie has a great question about Luke's. Is it privately owned by the family? And if so, are you all planning on keeping it that way?
Yeah, it's privately owned by our family. We've had a few investors over the years, but that's definitely our intention, is to keep it that way. We love running it. It's a big part of our family. When I say that, I mean our team in general. We've got people that have been working with us for, since the first day. People that worked on the first location. One of them is now the vice president of culture. They run our whole HR department. One of them is head of operation systems. One was our creative director for 3 or 4 years. So it's really turned into a family over the years, and a lot of my friends from high school now work with us. So it's definitely been a big rewarding part of the business, and one that I hope we keep, because that's what really motivates me on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it seems like it's like perusing the website, like it's a very tight-knit community that really celebrates everyone, which I think is really beautiful. I'm curious, do you feel connected? Like, how does the Tokyo branch? I'm fascinated by this. Do you often go to Tokyo to be like, hey, friends?
Yeah, I've probably, well, before this, I'd go twice a year, whether it's there, Singapore, Taiwan, and I don't know how, so we have a partner over there, and I don't know how they did it, but you go in and it feels like you're in our New York location. The teammates feel like they could be working in a New York location. They've just somehow figured out the culture and have instilled it into their shops over there. So it's super trippy going into those locations and just like realizing you're in Japan, but having it feel exactly like a location at home. So I don't know if that's, I think it's just a combination of having sort of a culture that feels tangible. And we would bring quite a few of our Japanese teammates over here, and we'd bring them out on boats, bring them out of the shacks, bring them to the processing facility. So I think they kind of got a taste of it, and then we're good stewards of it when bringing it back. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty similar. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. We've got a tip here for getting the lobster smell, aqua velva.
I'm going to remember that. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, that sounds great. I have some like Bowdoin questions for you. Can I throw them at you?
Yes.
Okay, great. Molten or thorn?
I would look at the menu. I didn't have like a ton of loyalty between the two. I would see what was going, and I would kind of base it on the food. I know a lot of people choose strongly, but
yeah,
I'd look at that. Look at the menu.
Okay.
What about you?
Me?
Yeah.
I think I kind of switched halfway through. Honest answer, like mine is the pub. I would always pick the pub over either. But probably thorn. Yeah, if we're being honest.
What was your go-to at the pub?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so one of my freshman year roommates and very best friends in the whole wide world, who's been blowing up the chat like a true champion, such a supportive friend. She and I every Friday would do Friday pub lunch, and I would get the chicken Caesar wrap and a pub cookie, and it was my favorite. I loved it so much. Good memories.
Great memories.
Okay, next question. Just like a favorite Bowdoin memory. It doesn't have to be like the best night ever, but just something that kind of like, oh, that was so fun for you.
I think it was sort of every year, but just when the weather would turn and you'd go out on the quad and everybody would be outside throwing frisbees or doing work, and just kind of like that energy of spring in Maine was just awesome. And just watching everybody come out of hibernation, I always really enjoyed that.
That's so awesome. Are a lot of your like fellow graduates in Maine, or are they kind of spread out? Friends in the chat, if you are a fellow graduate, hit us up.
They're pretty spread out. I don't think there's like a major concentration of people anywhere. I mean, for a long time it was New York, and then, for like first 4 years, and now people are pretty spread out. But got a couple of friends up in Maine, and one actually lives down the street from me in Biddeford, which is fun. So yeah, but people are always moving back up here. I think they get away from it, realize how good they had it, and they come back. So
I think that's very
trend
true.
that I'm seeing a lot of polar bears coming back.
That's awesome. Did you have a favorite class or favorite professor at Bowdoin?
I mentioned it earlier, but I loved the leadership class I took with Angus King. I thought that was incredible. And then I think that was my favorite.
It was like a business leadership class?
No, just leadership. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, it was just inspiring to hear his story. And then he would present examples of leaders that he looked up to. And then just you read about them, you talk about them. And then every once in a while, I'd invite you over to his house to watch a movie about him and have pizza. So that's the class I definitely tell people about and remember. I actually took a few theater classes, and I know that was your forte. But
what? Stop it! What theater classes did you take?
I took Acting 101. Is that what it was called? Just Introduction to Acting?
Sure, yes. Yeah.
It was a short-lived career for me, but it was fun.
Do you happen to remember who the professor was?
I do not.
No, that's fair. It was many moons ago. My theater friends who are also here are blowing up in the chat, very excited about this moment. I would love to hear you. Your family started this, your brother and your dad, and then you joined in. Do you have other siblings? And if so, where are they?
Yeah, I've got a younger brother. He's been working with us the whole time as well. He is very involved in the operations. So I would say like he's much more imperative to the operation than I am. Like he was running the restaurants for a while, and now he's up here at the production facility. He just moved back up here about 6 months ago. So yeah, all three of us work together. We all kind of have different parts of the business, or work in different parts of the business. So
3 boys, and you're the middle child.
I'm the middle child, yeah, 3 boys.
I'm one of 3 girls, and I'm the middle child.
How did we not figure this out before?
Look at us go. Okay, beautiful. If there are any more questions in the chat, we do have an answer on Aquavelva is a men's cologne from the 1960s. I know it from one episode of Monk in which it was mentioned. So there you go.
Is that just smell on top of smell though, or does it actually work?
I don't know. Maybe it works like Febreze.
Yeah,
like
just masks it. Yeah.
Patches. I don't know. I love those commercials where it like snaps the odor. Who's to say? Is lobster still served in the Bowdoin dining room? So can't speak to today, but when I was there, it was sometimes we had it like that big cookout time. Anyone remember that?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely had it as at the first day of school.
Yeah,
I think the school kind of used it as a tool of get back to campus on time so you can make your classes. So I do remember that was like always pretty smart, that it was a nice, like, you're not here, you'll miss this. And then I know it's your 5th year anniversary this reunion this year, but we had it for our 5th year as well. So I guess you'll have it in your 10th year in 5 years.
Fingers crossed that there's not another global pandemic. Linda says it's also served the night before graduation, which makes sense for the seniors. There's like a big lobster bake and everyone can bring their families.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Vague memories coming back. Okay, beautiful. Well, if there are no other questions in the chat, I think that's about it for tonight. Is there anything else that you want to plug or remind people of before we call it?
No, just appreciative of Bowdoin for hosting this and for you for moderating it, Maggie, and thanks to everybody for coming out.
Yeah, thank you so much to alumni for hosting this and for having us. I'm just going to double check and make sure there's nothing super important that I need to say. Thank you all for coming. It was so great to see your chats and your little participant numbers if we couldn't see your faces. And I hope that we will all be together soon in our reunion year, 5 years from now. Thanks, Bryan. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming.
See you guys. Thank you very much.